This is what it is, okay? I said empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
Welcome to the 30th episode of the Deployment Dojo. This is a live show where we introduce and discuss software installation topics using the WiX Toolset. I'm your host, Rob Mensching, and joining me once again is my very good friend and first student of the dojo, David Edson. David, how you doing, man?
Pretty good, thanks.
All right. What have we been doing? We've been doing all this local service stuff, and we finally got our permissions under control, right? Like, we got our file into another folder. We got all that sorted out such that we are only setting protections on that folder rather than getting permissions to all of our executables and getting a nice little protected area for our data file that we share between our local service with no permissions and our command line XE that spits out the data from that data file. That all kind of sounds like where we're at?
Yep.
All right. So today we're going to go beyond that. If you remember what kind of file that is that we've been working with, do you remember the classification of it from the very beginning? Well, like of this whole session? The application data? Does that sound familiar? Yeah.
Yes.
So we've been working with application data, and I've said that application data is the easiest thing to work with in installation because the application owns it. We get to clean it up, do whatever we want with it, migrate it, whatever, because it's application data. It's not the user's data. There are two other classifications that we get into. One is configuration data, and the other is user data. User data is also pretty interesting, and I'm reiterating this because it's so important. User data does not get touched by the install. Just don't. Just don't do it. It's the user data. Do not delete the the user's term paper. Just don't do it. All right?
Right.
So let's go ahead and talk about the configuration data. Let's jump in, get things kind of started up, and I want to talk about what we're going to configure. All right?
Okay.
All right, here we go. Count of 0. All right, let's get ourselves set up. Do our little set myself on branch. Oh, it's trying to tell me there's a new update of Visual Studio. Well, we're not going to do that right now. Thank you very much. First things first, new branch, episode 30. I don't know, it doesn't seem as big a deal as some of them have been, but still 30 is like kind of cool.
Right.
I mean, it's what, 52? Then we know we've done a year of these. That's gonna be cool.
That'll be kind of like a landmark.
That will be a landmark. All right.
Or a milestone.
Milestone, landmark. I think both of them work. This show alone is a landmark. Thank you for all of you joining. Robson, Bert, Paul, Martin. Man, we've got a nice little crew that's showing up every week. I love it. It's great. If you guys have questions, comments, things like that, it's been awesome. We've had more comments popping up on older shows. I think it's fantastic. I love the engagement, things to talk about. So what are we doing today? We're going to configure our local service. That's what we're going to do today. Don't I usually say start, something like that? All right, whatever. We're going to commit. I've staged this. We've got episode 30 ready and commit. All right, cool. We're all set up. What are we going to configure? Well, we've been working with our Windows service here. That is now a local service. Oh, and we left this nice little comment. That was very nice of us. All right. And also, you remember we had that little detour where I forgot to put the name of the file on the end of the path.
Right.
And that was creating problems for us. But we have it, and it's now called data.txt, which I think is a great name for it. Even though the default is what, Windows Service 1.txt, I think.
Right.
All right. So what can we configure in here? Well, in our don't want to delete that. In our continuing of our fake system here, I was thinking we would allow the end user, the person installing our application, to configure where this data file got put on their system. In this case, this data file is really, 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 really small, so it's not terribly interesting. But let's say it was really big, and we wanted to let the user pick what drive they put it on if they have multiple drives or things like that, right? Or just what folder they want to put it in. This is going to be a user configuration. The first time we've kind of talked about, hey, how do you do user configuration? And we're going to fall into a whole series of challenges. But we're going to start with the beginning and then work our way up, kind of stumble our way through each thing so you can kind of, we'll do it the beginner's way.
Okay.
All right. So if we're going to configure this, what do we configure? We're going to configure the data folder. And we already have a variable for this because it's already a directory. And we know that we can set directories from the command line when we're installing our MSI, right? Right. But to do that, what do we have to do first to allow it to be set from the command line? Something special about the directory here. We have to uppercase it.
Okay, of course.
Yep. Just like this install folder. So now I just hit Control-Shift-U in Visual Studio, by the way. I could have typed it. Data folder. Yep. Paul got you. All right. So we can already set the install folder in somewhere. And now, when it was this case, we could not set this from the command line, right? Like the Windows installer would just ignore it. But now if I make it uppercase, now the Windows installer will say, hey, you can set that directory from the command line. If you do not set it, it will be its usual default location inside the install folder. So as you move install folder, data goes with it. But now, by making it all caps, we allow the user to change it on the command line and move it somewhere else. Make sense?
Oh, yeah, it makes sense.
All right, cool. So is this just going to work if I make this capital? Let's go ahead and build.
Let's see.
It shouldn't. Identifier directory data folder could not be found.
Okay.
Right? So we have this guy here, so we need to uppercase him. Remember the data folder. The directory IDs inside the Windows installer are case sensitive. Ooh,
right.
They are case sensitive. And because we refer to it here, we need to update that one as well. So now these all refer to the same folder, which is defaulted to data inside install folder. Make sense?
Right. Yes.
Right. So if we were to install right now, just double clicking the MSI, nothing would be different. So we're going to have to go back to installing our MSI from the command line and changing that value.
I see.
Right?
Right.
All right. And now the cool thing is we already have this registry key here that we had in place from the very beginning that we could set into the, that we could communicate this user's choice to both the service and the console app to both know where to find the file, right? So our app was already set up to allow us to say, let us put this file wherever we want. What we're doing now is by making this uppercase, we're allowing the user to set it from the command line, and then all the rest of the software will just pick that up. You see how that kind of flows in and how by allowing us to have this registry key, this works?
Yes.
All right. So, and registry keys on Windows are a great place to store this sort of stuff. I know a lot of people try to avoid registry keys. You could also try to store them in text files. The Windows installer does not have a lot of options for updating text files. So creating registry keys is very straightforward and generally recommended in Windows for a lot of customization. So this is a great use of a registry key for storing a configuration file. Before it was like a little overkill. You're like, well, if we were just setting the file to our data folder and we knew where it was, we could have just said, just have the Windows service look in the data folder right next to it, right? And why were we going through this whole registry key? We're going through this registry key so I could set up the configuration in the future. All right.
Okay.
All right. So that which looked like a little bit of overkill in the past, now finally comes to think. You see, the lesson is coming to its conclusion. All right. Let me build again. And then let's install. Doobie-doobie-doo. I gotta bring up my console sandbox. Okay, here we go. Make this bigger. Dojo, Windows Sandbox. No errors. Probably should switch over to output. One succeeded. That's good. Build. All right. So do you want to clean it? Do you want to install it clean one time, or should we just go straight to configure, customizing it?
Yeah, do it clean one time.
All right. Okay. So, I'm gonna put this folder here. Okay. Bin x86 debug in US belt test package. Here we go. Installing. We'll go in here. Our service just popped up over here, and it's running, which means if we go in this folder, we expect to see our exes and our data folder, right?
Right.
Everything's good. And inside this data folder, we expect to see
that file, like whatever it was called, counting the data.
Data.txt. And if we look over here, our service is installed. All right, cool. And if we run console app 1 real quick, we can see it's counting. We got ourselves all the way up to 25, 26, 27. Cool?
Right.
All right. So basically, we didn't break anything. And you can see how that changing that value to all uppercase and make sure that it all connected, right? We kept the correct name everywhere, didn't change anything. So let's go ahead and uninstall now. I'm going to uninstall this way. Did you know you can right click on the MSI and then choose uninstall? Oh, wait. You used to. Show more options. There it is. Wow. I didn't know that Windows 11 changed that. So this used to be like right in the thing, but you can right click on MSI and say uninstall, and it'll do the same thing as uninstalling from up here. Just
I didn't know that.
Random note. That's because it has a .msi extension. All right, we're clean over here, and when I refresh, it's here. So all of our files, everything's all cleaned up. That's great. All right. Okay, now to the command line. To our directory. We can see belt test package. So MSI exec, switch I, belt test package, and then what do I call it? Data folder.
Yep.
Where should we put it? On the root?
Sure.
Sure, right? I mean, we can put it wherever we want. Now, I should probably let's open another folder to.
So you need another folder just to see it.
I like to I like them appearing and disappearing. I don't know why. It's just it's like the act of automation happening in front of you, being able to see it. All right. So by setting this on the command line, we are going to change that value, and it's going to flow into our MSI. It's going to change where that registry gets set, and hopefully all of our data now is written to the C: data folder. Mm-hmm. Right. Let's do it. Install. Think about it. Look, data folder appeared right here. The real test is it here anymore? Look, it's not here.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Let's open console app 1. I'm not even going to look in the data folder, see if it's there. Ah, it's there. It's working. Ta-da! Woohoo! This is great. Right?
Yes. Amazing.
You're like, wait, we were able to customize this directory, and we were able to set the data directory, which is normally underneath our install location, deployment dojo belt test, and we were able to move it wherever we chose to put it. So we customized this directory tree. I was gonna say we broke the tree, but it's not really broke. It just says that because these are uppercase, all uppercase, we can then set them independently onto the machine wherever we want.
Okay.
All right. Cool. Let's go ahead and do that. I want to just show you another thing we could. I'm going to do this. Show more options. Uninstall again, just because that was fun last time. All right. Uninstalling. Does our data folder go away?
Nope.
Ooh, it did not go away. That I did not expect. I expected it to remove it. Now it did get rid of our app, but it did not get rid of our data folder here. That's interesting. It didn't get rid of our file, and it didn't get rid of our folder. I'm going to delete it real quick. And I'm going to do another test. I'm going to install, doesn't matter where I put it. I'm also going to set the install folder, and I want to come back and look at that uninstall again. So let's go ahead and put this in apps belt test. All right. So in the root of C, did I keep that folder open? Yes, I did. So in the root of C, we're going to have both apps and a data folder side by side next to each other.
Okay.
And so you see here, because we're able to set these on the command line, we're able to completely change what this directory tree would normally be by overriding the values.
Right.
And we take over the whole path at that point. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. Install. All right, cool. And we look at down here on the root, we now have apps and data. And in our Power Program files, we have nothing. We have moved the app. And the apps are in here. And if we run console app 1, it's working. 13, and our data is here. All right. Now, I want to uninstall this and see what it does, because I was a little surprised that it didn't clean up after itself, honestly. Let's see. All right, here we go. Uninstall. Yes, I'd like to uninstall belt test. Go, go, go. And it left data again, and it left the data file.
Mm-hmm. But it did get rid of apps, right?
It did get rid of apps. So it did get rid of apps. And this is the part where I'm like, huh. All right, so let's go look and see why is data not getting cleaned up, and if we can tell here. Because I have to admit, I'm a little surprised because I thought we had everything set up correctly here. We have the remove file, we have the create folder, and we set the components directory to there. So it should remove the file data.txt from the data folder. It should remember all of this and be able to uninstall. This is not behaving the way I anticipated. Always makes these sessions so much fun, right? When you get to go, wait, let's go debug. All right, here's what we're gonna do now. We're gonna try to install, again, moving just the data folder. We'll let the app go be because it's behaving correctly.
Okay. Wait,
right.
Did you change install folder back, or are you gonna leave
I
it?
just removed it.
Okay.
I removed it from the command line, which means it goes back to its default value.
Oh, yeah, right.
Back in the program files folder. And it's there, and console app 1 is happy. Okay, great.
Right.
Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to manually uninstall, and I'm going to set data folder to C:\data. Now my expectation was that this was not necessary, okay? So we're going to figure this out after we see if this fixes it. All right, so I'm now going to do an X, which means uninstall this MSI. So instead of doing an uninstall from, like here, I'm going to say, hey, uninstall this MSI, and when you're uninstalling, set this property to here.
Okay.
I did not feel like this should be necessary, but let's see if this fixes the problem. And if it does, then we could talk about what's going on there. Are you sure you want to uninstall this program? Yes, I am. Hit work that time. Okay. So we're going to have to go ahead in the session here a little bit faster than I thought we would, because I really did expect the Windows installer to remember that value because it was a directory. The Windows installer normally remembers these customizations. At least I thought it did. Here. All right. So you saw how when I set the data folder, the Windows installer remembered, oh, yeah, we put it in data, and it cleaned everything up correctly.
Right.
So, and my expectation was that the Windows installer would remember, because if you were to dig deep into the if you dig deep into the installer configuration and where it puts all the stuff, there's a case where it tracks every single directory that it writes, and so my expectation was that it would remember that and do that. You know what? Let's try something. All right, let's do an install here. We're gonna hack around a little bit. Okay, we're gonna install same place. Set up our data folder again. Everything looks good here. Okay. Have we talked about log files at all?
About log files?
Yeah, log files?
Not much.
Oh, we did once, I think, right?
Yeah.
All right, so L*V, this is saying, give me a log file, and star means there's all this configuration you could say, star says all of it, and then verbose and everything else on top of it. And I'm just gonna say, we'll put it to log.txt. So what I'm going to do is, I want to take out the data folder. So what I'm going to do from the command line is do an MSI exec /x, the MSI itself, and then I'm going to get a log file. And one of the things that's going to be important in this log file, let me just go ahead and get this started. Now, this is not going to remove this data folder, right?
It shouldn't if it behaves the same way.
Right, if it behaves the same, unless adding in log files. It's like, oh, that would be weird. Yes. So, Martin, I have a hypothesis of why it works, and so that's what we're going to dig into now. Okay, data folder is still here. So let's look at log.txt. It'll open up a notepad. Can I make this a little bigger? All right, good. Notepad's going to behave. All right, remember I talked about this is like lots and lots of information. It's hard to see. Now,
yes.
And the reason I wanted to, want to jump in here is that we can search in here for data folder, and the Windows installer will tell us what it set all of its directories and properties to. So we should be able to search for directory folder and find the value it did. See, look, it found it right here. Data folder, adding this, and its value is C programs, yada, yada, yada. So it is not remembering data folder. It is not remembering the value there. And so at the end, so it jumps to the end of the log file, it then shows you a big list of all the variables inside your MSI and what they calculate to. So we can see that, yep, look, it actually did say data folder is back in this directory. All right. All right. So we've confirmed that that's what it's doing. I'm going to delete this data directory real quick. I'm going to go through and do an install where we customize install folder. All right. We're going to the test now where we have data folder and we're customizing install folder. By the way, this is not at all where I thought we were going to be today.
Okay.
But it is setting us up for where I want it to go. So I'm willing to dig into here. I want to dig into here a little bit because this is a good exploration. All right. So we're customizing data folder to SQL and data again, and we're customizing install folder back to the apps folder built test. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And this one we saw that it worked. Install folder worked. It uninstalled the apps folder. It just did not uninstall the data folder.
Right.
Okay. So how are we going to verify what's going on here? MSI
log
exec.
that too.
Exactly. l*v log.txt. It's going to overwrite my log file with this command. All right. So we're going to get a new log file, but this time we're going to see where it thinks install folder is and where data folder is. Okay.
All right.
Here we go. Let's get this log file back. Yes, I would like to uninstall, please. And now let's open up our log file. All right. Apps is gone. That's good. That's the behavior I expected data to have, but data is not gone. Let's look at log.txt. We'll make this big again, maybe not that big. And we're going to search for, I'm going to search for data folder again. Look at that. See, it set data folder to the default value, which was, oh, look, it figured out where install folder was. And look, it remembered install folder. All right. See that?
Okay. Yes.
Yep. And it goes, property change, install folder, its value is this. So why did the Windows installer remember install folder, but not remember data folder? Do you want to take any guess?
I don't even know if I have a guess.
Don't even know where to start, right? Yeah, I have a guess. We're going to shut down our thing. Wow. This is like, all right, this is not at all where I thought we were going to be today, but this is going to be a great exploration because I'm sure this has totally got some of you in the past. So Martin says, how does it remember install folder? Yeah, so my thing was I expected it to remember install folder. And the reason is the Windows installer does track all the folders when it installs. So it knows how to do exactly what it just did. And that's why I'm confused why data folder was not being remembered. But I have a hypothesis. And then Robson's asking, not sure at the time I had impressions, something to do with being a default property. So folders are a little different from properties. We probably will get to a place where we talk about properties in the future, but right now we're going to continue to dig into folders and get to the root of this. So you guys are all hinting around the issue. What I'm going to do is I have to pick something. Yeah, and Martin has hit it, which is my guess too, is that there is no file in the directory.
What do you mean there's no file in the directory?
In this component. Let me see if I can get this to build real quick. All right, so I'm going to just grab a file that is in our directory. We have the icon for our belt test. Let's see if I rebuild this.
Oh, so when it looks at that component and it doesn't see a file there like that, it doesn't keep track of it? Is that what you're...
Yeah. Yep, all right, cool. We built. That's good. So when we install this MSI, I expect to see this FGICO in the folder as well. We're not using it. It's just a file that I'm tossing in there.
And now your assumption is the Windows installer will say, oh, okay, now I got to keep track of where this data folder, and that it would work. Like an uninstall would remove it, right?
Yes, that is my hypothesis. Spin it up, sandbox. Here we go. All right, I'm going to need a command prompt because it's forgotten all my command prompts from before. I could have left it open, but I wanted to get a nice clean sandbox again, you know?
Yep.
All right, this is a fun exploration of not what I thought we were doing today, but that's okay.
Well, still config stuff, right? I mean,
oh yeah, and this is actually a good thing because it will play into things that we're going to talk about in the future. So it's a good lesson to learn, I think, including for me to relearn. And we're gonna see if this works. What happens? Okay. Whew. All right. What do we got? We got this. We got program files over here. I want another window open over here so that you guys kind of have a visual layout of how everything's at. This one again is the root drive. Okay. Get that guy showing up over there. All right, here we go. MSI exec, switch I, belt test MSI, data folder equals, we'll just keep going to C: data. Sounds good?
Yeah. Yep.
Install folder equals C: apps belt test. And notice there were 2 folders here that I created. I created both apps and belt test, and it removed both of them before. Right?
Wait, do you not want to test just the data folder one before you do the install folder as well?
I can, whichever way.
Well, I don't.
Nope, makes me no. Let's do it this way. If you think it's a good idea, we're doing it that way. Here we go. Install. We have customized the data folder, so we expect our app to show up here. Looks like it is. And we expect our data folder to show up in the root of the drive. Launch console app 1. Looks like where everything's working. Right. We're still configured correctly. Okay. Yep. Now let's uninstall.
Yep. And just before it would not remove the data folder.
Correct.
And this time the assumption is it will.
And let's look at the data folder real quick. We can see that, hey, look, there's data and an icon. It's switched to this view. That's kind of, I like the details view better, but so we can see, hey, we put this file in here. Everything looks good. All right. So let's uninstall. Do we want to? Yes, uninstall. Here we go. Boom.
So that's what it was, huh? So
that is the issue. All right. I have to tell you a secret. A secret about the Windows installer. I'm not going to close Sandbox yet. I can leave it behind here. We'll just leave it behind. So we're going to dig into this a little bit here. The Windows installer has call it a favorite resource, an important resource for each component. Have we done any repairs yet, David?
Not really. We've did them early on when we were looking at, we did a little bit early on, but not a little bit really.
But we know the Windows installer can repair it, right?
Yes.
And there's a way that it can really quickly check to see if a component is there, and it will check one thing inside that component. It'll check the key path, is what they call it, right? And you can specify what the key path is explicitly in WiX. And if you don't specify it, then WiX will pick the first thing in the component that can be a key path. There are only 3 things that can be key paths. This is sad, but it's true. You can have files as key paths. You can have registry keys, registry values as key paths, and you can have ODBC data sources as key paths. That last thing is a very ancient database connectivity technology that I don't know that anybody uses anymore. I know somebody uses because someone just asked about it, but it's not interesting for any of the kind of stuff that we're going to be talking about. It's very old database connectivity stuff. So what happens is that when the Windows installer registers the component, it registers the key path with it as well. And in this case, the key path for this component with our Windows service is the file itself. So if you ask the component, is this component okay? It'll just check that file and go, is the file good? If so, it says, yes, this component is correct. It does not do all the extra work necessary to check that the service is actually installed properly. Okay.
Okay.
Now that's just a quick check. And what we just discovered today is that the Windows installer will remember the components directory if you have a file key path, but not if you have a registry key path. Okay. So we're going to do a test here, and we're going to explicitly set this to key path equals yes. We're going to say, instead of making the file the key path, let's bring it around here.
Okay.
Instead of making the file the key path, let's make this registry key the key path. Okay.
You got to comment at that.
I could do this. I don't have to. So because I set this as the key path explicitly.
Okay.
Right. It says, okay, fine. The registry key, this is not it. The other way to do that is I don't have to set the key path if I set this first. All right. Now, normally if you're creating very small components with only one file and one registry key, well, that one file is the key path and everything works out. But I'm just going to be super explicit here. I'm going to say this register key is the key path, and this file is just being carried along with this component. All right. Let's go ahead and do a rebuild. Oh, I didn't need to do a rebuild, but that's fine. It's not valid. Yes, and now the Windows installer is telling me, sorry, not the Windows installer. WiX is telling me, hey, remember all those GUIDs that we talked about in the past that components have? And that WiX is generating all of them for me? We know that this sort of configuration with a registry key and a file can get you into trouble. So I am going to take the file out. Now, this puts us right back where we were. How do I want to do this demo? You know, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to give it a real GUID. Because WiX is like saying, this is a dangerous configuration, what you're doing. This is not ideal, not what we'd recommend. So you have to provide your own GUID, essentially. Okay. This is only for testing purposes, all right?
I still don't understand the reason for the icon right now if we're trying to fix it.
I want to see, so there's still a file in here. So I'm testing to see, will the Windows installer still register and remember the data folder, even if, as long as there's a file, or does it have to be a key path of the component? Does the file have to be the key path?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It is no longer the key path, so we're going to find out if it remembers now. And I think I just did a build. Output. There we go. All right. So I have all this stuff still open. We're clean here. We're clean here. All right. Let's do an MSI exec. We're going to customize the data folder again. Install. Now in this case, you can't see it, but the registry key is the key path, but we have our files and everything looks good here.
Right.
Run the console app just real quick. Yep. All right. That's working. Now we're going to uninstall. Let's see if the Windows installer remembered the folder this time because we put a file in it, not just a key path. Yeah. See, it didn't. Look, it left them behind.
Okay.
It left them behind because it doesn't think the data folder is in this directory. Let's look at the log. Let's do it again. We'll do it with the log file this time. All right.
I got it.
Install here. Wow. This is probably something I knew a long time ago, but I wouldn't organize things like this necessarily. So I haven't hit this problem in a long time. All right. So everything's working. Now we're going to MSI exec, switch X, belt test MSI, switch L star V, log.txt. All right, we will now uninstall our belt test and get the log file. We're going to see it, leave this data folder behind. We're going to look in the log file and it's probably going to show us exactly what I think it just showed. All right, data folder is probably going to be set to, yep, program files, Dojo, data. So it is the act of making the file the key path that causes the Windows installer to remember that this component got installed to this directory. So it is that remembering that sets data folder correctly. Okay.
Okay. All right.
All right. So we do not want to install this file source icon with our code. We want this situation without a GUID. I want to get back to where we want to be. Right? This is where we want to be, right? And we want it to clean up if the data folder is not configured correctly, right?
Right.
Next episode. I really didn't mean to make a cliffhanger. This actually is really perfect because I was going to talk about this problem next anyway. Robson's already kind of touching on it, and we'll go from there. And Bert is saying there's another data folder in folders. No, there's no other data folder. There's only this one, all caps. I think everything's correct. All right. All right. Okay. So a little bit of a cliffhanger. Do we understand the problem that we have right now?
Yes, I think so. But then is the problem anytime you make a component, you need a file of some sort if you're going to do any kind of.
You need you need a file key path component if you want the Windows installer to remember that folder's location for you.
All right, but you can't do the key path on the registry.
But in this case, we want the key path on the registry, so we're going to have to do something else to remember this folder.
Right.
Make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. The problem, I mean,
the problem. Yeah, to be very clear, is this the behavior that it should have?
Right.
No, I would argue not. I would argue it is not the behavior that the Windows installer should have, but it is the behavior it has. So do I want to send this up? I do want to send this up. We're going to send this up even though it doesn't work perfectly. All right. Yes, save. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool.
Because it still works if you don't run it from the command line with the data folder specified. Well, no.
Yes, everything worked fine because it's defaulting to the correct location now.
Right.
All right, look, I'm gonna go check. Those Windows installer folks must have been smoking some. Yeah. Paul's got a good point there. Here, you know what? We're gonna go Spark.
Okay.
All right. So we're just kind of like all over the place now. So what were the Windows installer folks thinking? So I know what they were thinking. Believe it, I was an intern back when some of this stuff was being built, and one of the problems is that there's a configuration challenge. If you write down every single folder and all of their customizations, then you end up having to write down tons of configuration. And the Windows installer was dealing with, we were still targeting Windows 95. The Windows installer was still shipping software on 1.4 floppies. Like you got to kind of get in the mindset of where they were, the challenges that they were facing at that time. There were legitimate size and challenges to think of. That's why remember I talked about that advertising where you could like just put the shortcuts on the machine, but not actually put the whole app until you needed it.
Right.
All of that is because of disk size challenges. And in this case, they're trying to minimize the data that they write to disk or that they have to track where all the folders were customized. Because you probably didn't need it because you're using a registry value. I think that was the wrong decision because it creates all these weird little things inside it that you have to deal with later when you do that, right? There's all these little surprises that can pop up in the Windows installer, which does trip up on people a lot. These little things, you're like, why is that way? And it's just design things that you're like, yeah, I wish they would do it better. Now there's another question of why have they not in the last 34, 35 years changed it, fixed it, improved it? That's a very good question, but that goes to the Windows team. You got it. Folder is not cleaned up when customized. We will fix that in the next session. All right. Other things to think, this has been good. This isn't what I expected this to do today, but it did actually bring out a problem that I was going to bring out next time. So this is actually really nice to have hit it. Well, is it nice? It's interesting to have hit the problem this way. And because we're going to be hitting this same sort of problem in a different way in a little bit. Do you know of any plans for Windows installer version greater than 5.0? I am not aware of any plans for a Windows installer version greater than 4.0. All right, I think we're good here. I'm going to push this while people are thinking about it. So, David, anything else? Things you want to talk about here? Clarifications? Usually your questions are other people's questions, so I'm always happy. I want to make sure I get them.
No, I think we touched on what questions I have right now.
All right. Episode 30. Configuring LocalService. I think I'm
so. A lot. I mean, surely a lot of people have run into this before, though, right? Or maybe people just don't notice it when a lot of stuff is left behind.
That's possible. Maybe some people don't notice that it gets left behind, or in a lot of cases, like you don't configure this way. So, I mean, part of the thing is that we chose to put the creation of the folder and all of that together with the data folder. That we put it all inside this directory, and then we made our registry key the key path. Mm-hmm. Right? If it had been the file, we wouldn't have this problem. We wouldn't have noticed this problem.
Okay.
So it's kind of if you get in the situation, then you hit it. If you don't get in the situation, then you don't feel it. Right? And these are these little sharp edges inside the Windows installer where people haven't done it. It's been 15 years. Oh, since Windows installer 5.0. I think that's what Martin's saying. Martin's saying it's been 15 years since Windows installer 5.0. Yeah, that sounds right. Like, because the Windows installer last major update was in Windows 7. I mean, And there are things, while we're letting this build go back here, I've lost track of it. There it is, I think. No, that's not. I lost my build. There it is. It's like, I want to be able to see that while it's going along here. Enable auto merge. I just love auto merge. Okay. So while this build finishes, there are disadvantages that they're not fixing issues inside Windows Installer, going forward. The other thing though is that the Windows Installer is very stable. You know the behavior it's going to have, and it doesn't change and break on you, which is the flip side of them continually changing things. So what you do is you learn, you understand the quirks, the issues that are in it, and you know that they're stable, and you know that this is the behavior, and then you just design for them, and you know how to handle them. And so that's all, a lot of the stuff that we're kind of working through in the dojo. It's like, yeah, it's real, and you just know it's here. Although there are a number of things that I do wish the Windows installer would fix, improve, change, but I don't know that they're going to be doing a lot of that anytime soon. So, fortunately, you can do anything. You just have to kind of find some of these things. And what did we learn today? We learned that directories for components are not remembered. Their customizations is not remembered unless you have a file key path. And I will remember that, especially since I did it live in front of all of you and made a minor fool of myself. But at least I was able to figure it out. And sometimes I guess that was probably more interesting, isn't it, David? Kind of going through even the experts sometimes forget. How do you figure out where you're going? We got a nice little usage of the log file to see very quickly. Oh, look, you can see where all your directories are being customized to.
Right.
And a little bit of the story behind it is almost always these decisions were made because they are worried about size and speed back in 1998. 99. I'm dating myself. 1998, 99, when they were working on all these things and finishing them. And then they decided that those were good enough and they didn't change them at all going forward. All right, I think our build is done. Nope, not quite done. Anything else people want to talk about? Questions I have right now? Like I said, this is a fantastic start. I think this is a great digression because it will also, we're going to find another case where this could happen. So we're going to have to tackle this problem anyway.
Okay.
Code is merged. Deployment Dojo has updated with all these changes. You can now go through the same experience and kind of experiment. I do recommend doing it in your sandbox because you saw some things got left behind. And we'll be back in a week, right? Right, David?
Yep.
Next week?
See you next. Yep.
Yep. All right, all of you. Like Dave said, we'll see you all next week. This has been fun. A little bit unexpected, but it was fun. All right, you guys keep coding. You know I am. Bye.